the good thing about scoring in the 140s is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We have a lot of potential to unlock over these next 2 to 3 months. This is Karima, and she's looking to improve her LSAT score from the low 140s to a 165 in the next 2.5 months. My name is Steve Schwartz, and I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. Today, Karima's going to bring me her biggest LSAT challenges, and I'll help her address them as she looks to improve by 20 to 25 points. Tell me a little bit about your LSAT prep so far.
Yes, so at first I was studying with one-on-ones with Andrew. And the past week I switched over to Dusan after being on his live classes. I felt like it was just a better fit for me to understand the concepts. And yesterday I also jumped on a 7 p.m. class where I saw how I need to work so much more on like the conditional reasoning and parallel reasoning I was having troubles with. So I do think I need to work on that a little bit better. And then last week I did a practice test that I wasn't too happy about the results, but after doing like the Socratic review of all of the incorrect answers that I received, it gave me like a better idea of what I need to work on and what I need to look for and focus while actually reading strategically through the stimulus.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it. So, sounds like the class and the review process is helpful. What's your ultimate goal score for the test?
I'm 165.
165, okay. And where are you scoring right now?
144 on the past 2 tests. However, the one that I was pretty disappointed, it was 39.
39, okay. Got it. So we're looking for maybe 25, 30 points between now and your test. And how long do we have till your test?
At first, I was going to schedule to test in August, but Dusan recommended that I may just take a little bit longer to study and test at the beginning of September. So I may make that change or go ahead and do the August.
Got it. Okay, so we've got about 2 months, maybe 3 months, and that additional month of studying could be valuable if you would add 50% more time in terms of weeks that you could put into this. And so that might unlock more potential since you are looking for a bigger score increase. Now, how many hours per week are you able to put into your prep between now and then?
So I believe initially we said 2 hours. However, it's been sometimes it's been 2 hours, but some days it's like an hour and 30, so it would be like an hour of me studying on my own, then hopping on a live class for the 7 p.m. logical reasoning, or it would be me reviewing like the wrong questions that I received on like a drill set or a practice test.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, there's a mix there to be had between theory and application, right? And so it could be that through the lessons on the platform, you're able to get some theory. In the classroom setting, you might get some theory there as well with some demoed examples. And then you're going to do more application on your own in your additional study time. Is that kind of the breakdown that you're looking at?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me save you about 100 hours of pain. You do not need to master every single LSAT question type to see your score jump. I know that sounds weird, especially if you've ever seen one of those giant color-coded spreadsheets online. You know the ones I mean. Must memorize all 15 logical reasoning question types, plus subtypes, and which year each one appeared most. And look, I respect the hustle, but if you're sitting in the 140s or 150s and you're stressing over how to solve parallel flaw questions faster, you're solving a problem you don't even have yet. Let's use an example. Say you were trying to get stronger. If you've never lifted weights before, what's going to help you more? Deadlifts, squats, bench press, or trying to perfect your Turkish getup with a kettlebell while standing on one leg? Exactly. Master the basics first. Same with the LSAT. The heavy lifts are necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. These show up again and again. They are the foundation. And once those are solid, your confidence will skyrocket. And so, this is one of the first things we correct with our students. They're just spread too thin. They're trying to go 1 inch deep in 10 different directions. Instead, we help them go 10 inches deep in one direction where it actually matters. You don't need to be a master of every single question type yet. You need to be a sniper with the ones that show up the most. And once you've got those down, then and only then do we go back and clean up the outliers. Because this is not about becoming an LSAT trivia expert. It's about using your time wisely to get results. That is what smart prep looks like. Now, aside from conditionals and parallels, what are some of the other big areas that give you trouble?
I believe that some of the inference and the strengthening, I feel like I'm pretty okay with, but the weakening questions, sometimes like that, I choose the wrong answer for that. I'm not sure why, but that was the last thing that Andrew and I focused on. So I have seen like some improvements. However, I do think that I need to drill all of the sections a little bit more, and especially the parallel reasoning, because sometimes I'm not sure about like when I graphed it, like X and Y, or whatever the case may be, how they relate to each other. And most times I'm only able to see it because of me kind of breaking down the structure and not me actually knowing how to graph it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I mean, the good thing about scoring in the 140s is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We have a lot of potential to unlock over these next 2 to 3 months, and help you see more clearly what are going to be the right strategies that we can apply to the more common question types. So the reason I'm asking what are some other weak areas is because parallels, everybody hates them, but there's only a couple per exam. And conditional reasoning also is not a huge part of the exam. And so if you're having trouble with weakened questions in particular, then I'd want to make sure that you're crystal clear on the different major ways to weaken an argument, so that ideally you can go into the choices with a prediction of what the weakener might be. And so one major way to weaken an argument, for example, is to weaken the relationship between the evidence and the conclusion. And so even while the evidence, of course, is given, it's not open to question. We have to assume it as true. How could that potentially not weaken the argument if it were not that relevant? The argument assumes that the evidence is relevant to the conclusion, and that's the basis upon which they're making their claim. And so if we say, well, yeah, the evidence is technically true, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. And so an example of that would be something like someone is applying to law school, their undergrad GPA is great, their master's degree GPA is terrible. And they're like, I'm applying to law school, my odds of getting in are not very good because I have this low master's degree GPA. And so yes, while they might actually have a low GPA in their master's program, I could point out that for law school admissions purposes, the data that they look at is primarily based on your undergraduate GPA, combined with your LSAT score, of course. And so while it is technically true that this person's master's GPA is low, it's like, well, so what? Your LSAT calculated GPA. Yeah, so I'm promoting an alternative way to look at the facts. And I'm saying, yes, the evidence is given, but it's not that relevant to the conclusion because law school admissions officers take your undergraduate LSAT calculated GPA and they combine it with your LSAT score in what's called an admissions index, and that is the largest determinant of your chances. And they'll see the master's GPA is lower, and that's context, but not a huge deal because they're looking at your undergrad GPA and your LSAT score. And so that's a way to weaken the relevance of the evidence to the conclusion. Trying to master parallel reasoning too early. Sounds responsible, right? You think you're being thorough and you want to be ready for everything. But the truth is, parallel reasoning is like doing long division by hand in a world where everyone else uses a calculator. I mean, sure, it's technically a skill, but is it the best use of your time right now? Probably not. So if you're still in the 140s or 150s, spending 45 minutes diagramming 5 parallel questions is like rearranging your bookshelf when your kitchen is literally on fire. You've got bigger priorities right now. Parallel reasoning questions only show up maybe once or twice per logical reasoning section, and they take forever. Compare that to necessary assumption, inference, flaw, or strengthen, which appear several times per section and are way faster to solve once you get the hang of them. And so we build our students' study plans around what moves their scores up the fastest. That means focusing first on the high-frequency question types that are relatively easy to improve with the right strategies. Parallel questions come later. Once your fundamentals are strong and you're consistently hitting at least 160 or better, then it might make sense to come back and polish those parallel skills. But until then, let go of them. You don't need to be the LSAT's Swiss Army knife. You've got to be a hammer, focused, simple, and effective. So if you ever feel like you're spending too much time trying to decode parallel questions, just know that's not your fault. That's the LSAT trying to distract you. You don't need to outsmart the test. You just need to out-prioritize it. Another way to weaken your argument would be to bring in additional information. And so we could say, in this same example, the person's like, all my GPAs are terrible. My undergrad GPA, my master's GPA, I have no legal work experience. And I'd be like, that all may be true. But if we also learned as new information, this person has a 180 LSAT score, well, hey, 180 LSAT score can make up for a lot of other things, right? And so that's new information not mentioned in the stimulus or the argument, but is important additional context that if taken to be true from the choices, this person's got a 180 LSAT, suddenly we're looking at their chances very differently. And everything I've just said here, we just flip around for strengthen.
Okay. So the 2 steps is to find like the relevant relationship and then weaken it by promoting other alternatives or by bringing in additional information that will weaken whatever that stimulus is.
Right, good. So what I've done here with these 2 examples, the first one about the low master's GPA specifically, I was weakening the relationship between the evidence and the conclusion by saying that the master's GPA thing just isn't that important because it's not that relevant to someone's admissions chances. And yeah, it's somewhat important, but not nearly as important as LSAC calculated undergrad GPA. The second example I gave about the 180 LSAT was just bringing in new information. And then another thing that you could do is you could also play up alternatives. That's another thing that they'll often do.
Okay.
And we have in-depth lessons on all of this inside the course, and we can cover it more in class if you'd like, and you can bring it up with your coach as well.
Definitely.
But just to zoom out here, bigger picture, I'm going to encourage you, Karima, to look at what are the biggest needle movers you can apply to your prep in the next 2 to 3 months. And so one of them would be to work on getting clear on the more common question types because they're going to be more impactful. And so what we've done here was talking about weaken, but as I said, you just flip around everything I said and make it strengthen. And so for strengthen, you would increase the relevance of evidence to conclusion. Or you would bring in new information that strengthens the conclusion or strengthens the argument rather than weakens it. For example, increasing the relevance, we would say, actually, what if master's GPA mattered a whole lot for admissions? That would hurt the person's chances. Or if we said that person had a super low LSAT score combined with a low GPA, that would be, again, a negative indicator for admissions, which would then strengthen that person's argument. And so if we look at weaken and strengthen and inference and flaw and necessary assumption, those are going to be all way more common types to master in terms of question types.
Okay, so focusing more on those questions that come up more in the test versus, even though I can work on the other ones too, making sure I focus on the ones that do come up more.
Exactly. So to guide you on the most common types to look at, I would be thinking about necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. Those are the 3 most common types of logical reasoning questions. So I would want you to get crystal clear on those before looking at anything else.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now let's talk about one of the biggest LSAT mind tricks of all time. You see a question that says, which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument? And you think, cool, I just have to find the one that strengthens the argument. Sounds easy, right? Nope. This is exactly where the LSAT gets you. The wording is simple, but the logic underneath, that's where it gets slippery. You see, a lot of students will try to evaluate each answer choice based on whether it's true or plausible or interesting. But that's not what the question is asking. They're asking, does this new piece of information make the conclusion more believable, or less, or have no impact at all? That's it. Strengthen means stronger connection between evidence and conclusion. Weaken means weaker connection between evidence and conclusion. So the key is not to get distracted by whether the answer sounds smart or feels relevant. Your job is to ask, does this build the bridge, or break it, or have no impact on the bridge? And so we give our students a golden rule. Focus on the relationship, not the facts, not your opinion, not what could be true, just does this tighten or loosen the argument? So let's say the argument was, people who drink green tea live longer. Therefore, everyone should drink green tea to live longer. Now they give you a choice that says, People who drink green tea are more likely to exercise regularly. Bam! That weakens the argument. Why? Because now, maybe it's not the tea. Maybe it's the gym, it's the exercise. And that little shift pulls the rug out from the conclusion. And this is the kind of thing that doesn't take 10 hours of memorization. It just takes pattern recognition and the right lens. So don't let the simplicity of the question stem fool you. Strengthen and weaken may look easy, but they are some of the most high leverage, high frequency questions on the entire test. If you master them, you're building score momentum that actually matters. Hey, real quick guys, a lot of you have been asking me how you could be featured in one of these LSAT study breakdowns and get feedback on your approach. The only way is to join one of my LSAT coaching programs. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And now back to the show. How are you feeling about reading comp?
I'm feeling okay. It's kind of difficult for to do like the Socratic review after. I think it's a little bit easier, like going through the logical reasoning questions because they're all standalone questions. However, it's been better when I reread the reading and then go over the questions again. And I can kind of see like, oh, that literally was a small mess up that I could have avoided if I like ran a little bit more strategically. So I think I can get a bit better at reading comp, but it's not terrible.
Okay, good. So if I understand correctly here, what you're saying is that the review process is a little bit hard to engage in. Was I catching that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
what exactly makes it harder? Is it because you have to go back into the passage?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's a lot wordier to navigate.
Yes. And then sometimes, like if I pre-phrase something or I think something means, I've been trying to stay away from pre-phrasing because sometimes I can pre-phrase it and it's like incorrect and it's not really what the stimulus is saying or what the passage is saying. So that's kind of like something that I come across. However, like it's been a little bit better after like going through the live classes and just saying the little things that they focus on.
Yeah. No, I'm glad the classes are helping. And I'll say a couple things about this. One is that just more exposure will naturally lead to improvements. So as you do more passages, you will better see the patterns and you'll develop more intuition about what to be looking for in the passage that will directly relate to the choices. So over time, you'll get to a place where you can read the passage and you can already anticipate that they're going to ask about particular sections of the passage because they are perhaps a bit more nuanced. And so LSAC loves to play on that nuance, or things are buried or hidden within that are actually quite significant. Let's clear something up right now. If you think you're just bad at reading comp, you're probably wrong. Reading comp is not about how well you read, it's about how well you recover. Let me explain. The LSAT is not testing your ability to write or evaluate a book report. It's testing how well you navigate confusing information under pressure. What trips up most students is not the passage itself, it's what they do after they get a question wrong. Here's what a lot of students do. They'll miss a reading comp question, shrug, and move on. Or worse, they'll look at the right answer and go, okay, I guess that makes sense, but they're not digging into why the wrong one was tempting in the first place. And that's the real problem. We show our students how to review reading comp like they're detectives, not just asking what was the right answer, but what did the wrong one almost get right? Where did I start second guessing? Did I get tricked by extreme language or by confusing phrasing? And was I locked in on the structure of the passage, or was I just kind of floating around aimlessly? That's where the breakthroughs happen. And also, let me tell you something a little bit controversial. Going back and rereading a paragraph isn't a weakness, it's a strategy, if you know how to do it efficiently. And so just like we teach with logical reasoning, in reading comp, you don't have to remember everything. You've just got to know where the info lives. Tag the paragraph, use a mental label, say to yourself, this is the part where they contrast viewpoints. And now, when the question asks about that, you know exactly where to go. Think of it like Google Maps. You don't memorize the whole city, you just drop a pin where it matters. So, no, you're not bad at reading comp, you just haven't built the muscle for reviewing it the right way. And once you do, it becomes a completely different section. The other thing I'll say is that LSAC loves to give you terrible wording in the choices. They love to make it convoluted and difficult to understand. And so if you go in with a pre-phrase, that can help, but you've got to look at how exactly LSAT's wording could line up with your pre-phrase. It may not seem obvious at first glance, but it will be there. Or at least what you can do is you can work by elimination. So if you're not really seeing a perfect match for what you've predicted, you can say to yourself, okay, well, I don't see anything I love, but which one of these choices is it not? So which one definitely does not line up with my prediction? You can eliminate those, and then whatever remains, even if it doesn't seem a perfect match, it's the best of the worst, it's all that's left, you pick it and move on. And even if you don't understand what it's saying for that matter, a lot of times there are choices where you may not understand its relationship to the question stem, but if you've knocked out all the others, that's gotta be it. You can get it right even to not knowing what exactly it means. This one's for everybody who reads all 5 choices, eliminates 4, and then still picks the wrong one. I know how brutal that feels. You're like, I narrowed it down. I thought I had it. Why am I still getting it wrong? Here's the good news. That's actually a sign of progress. When students first start prepping, they don't even know what's going on. They're picking answers almost randomly, and nothing at all feels familiar. But once you're consistently down to 2 choices, once you're at the 50-50 and I still picked the wrong one stage, you're in what we call the refinement zone. You're no longer struggling with basic comprehension. You're now working on precision. And this is where things can really start to move, if you know how to review your mistakes the right way. And so, for our students in this stage, we focus on helping them identify why the wrong answer felt right. Was it a misread of the conclusion? A trap word that sounded tempting? An assumption about what the argument was saying? Or maybe a false sense of confidence because you've seen something similar before? We don't just go, oh well, maybe next time. We dissect it, we name the trap, and we turn it into a lesson. That way, the next time the same trap shows up, you don't fall for it again. Here's what most students miss. When you miss a question by a little, you're in the best position to learn something big. It's like lifting weights. The reps where your form breaks down a little, that's where the growth happens. So next time you miss a question by this much, don't beat yourself up. Double down, get curious, ask, why did I pick that? Because in that moment, you're one insight away from a breakthrough. How are you feeling about all of this, Karima? Are you feeling like you're on the right track with it?
Now I do feel like I am. The week prior, I didn't feel like I was because I had a death in my family. However, you guys were super helpful. Thank you with updating like my plan to help me get back on track and everything like that. So that was super helpful. And now I feel like that I'm getting back into the groove and finding my cadence. And then Dusan is especially helpful with how he words things and he breaks it down for me to understand.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear. Yeah, so for your action plan, Karima, going forward, again, focus on the more common types of logical reasoning questions. Master necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. Then strengthen and weaken. Deal with the parallels and the conditionals later because they're less common. For reading comp, definitely devote more time there. And think about how can you apply process of elimination to the choices, especially in reading comp more than anywhere else, along with just getting more exposure. And of course, keep joining the semi-private sessions, keep booking your one-on-one coaching sessions as well. I'm going to say something that sounds completely backwards, but hear me out. Sometimes the best way to improve your LSAT score is to study less. What I mean is, if you've been grinding for months doing full-length tests, drilling sections, watching every video, rereading explanations, you might be burned out. But you don't even realize it because you've convinced yourself that more is better. But the LSAT doesn't reward you for the hours that you put in. It rewards you for clarity and pattern recognition. And those things actually get worse when you're running on empty. We've had students coming to us saying, I've been studying for 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I'm stuck in the same score range. What is wrong with me? Usually, nothing is wrong. What's happening is they're overtraining. They're not giving their brain space to breathe. No time to recover. No mental reset. Just more drills, more pressure, more guilt. That's like trying to build muscle by hitting the gym for 4 hours every single day and never sleeping. You're going to end up weaker, not stronger. And so, for our students in this situation, we often pull back hard. We cut their study time in half. We give them intentional rest. We swap out timed sections for light review. And we reintroduce full-length tests only when they're mentally ready. And guess what? Their scores go up because now their brain has space to connect the dots. They can actually remember what they practiced. They approach questions with focus, not fatigue. So if you're feeling stuck despite working hard, ask yourself this: am I tired or am I just undisciplined? If you're tired, rest. If you're undisciplined, it's time to recommit. But don't confuse the two. More time does not always equal more progress. Sometimes the best thing you can do is close the book and go for a walk. Real quick guys, if you're just getting started with your LSAT prep or you're looking for a quick refresher, you can grab your free easy LSAT cheat sheet linked below this video. It's jam-packed full of concrete actionable tactics you can take and apply to your LSAT prep right away for a quick score boost, and it's 100% free, so you can grab your copy below. And now, back to the show. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
I think my biggest insight was about how to navigate the both strength and weakness question, as well as what to focus on, because I'm trying to focus on every single part of the test, which it makes more sense to focus on those questions that are most common. So yes, I believe that was my biggest takeaway in swallowing as going over the 2 ways to strengthen and weaken. And I definitely think now I understand a little bit better those 2 ways that we can by weakening the relationship between the evidence and the conclusion, or adding new information that will also weaken or strengthen the question.
Perfect. All right. Well, if anything else comes up, you always feel free to reach out and let me know, and keep at it.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great one. Thank you again for
You too,
jumping
Karima.
on.
Now let's talk about one of the most common traps LSAT students fall into: thinking your LSAT score is your identity. And I get it. You've seen the Reddit threads, just got a 178, ask me anything. Or if you don't break 170, don't even think about T14. And I know it's easy to feel like if you're not scoring in the top 1%, you're already behind. But that's just not true. Reality is your LSAT score is important, but it's just a means to an end. It's not a ranking of your intelligence, not a moral judgment, not a label you carry forever. Once you're in law school, no one's even gonna care. It's just a standardized test. And like every standardized test, it can be beaten. But you don't have to destroy it. You've just gotta do well enough to get where you wanna go. And so we always ask our students, what is your actual goal? Because if your goal is to get into a solid law school, graduate with minimal debt, and have the flexibility to build a meaningful legal career, then maybe you don't need a 180. Maybe a 165 gets the job done. And if you're aiming higher, great, let's get you there. But if you're killing yourself trying to chase a number that's not even necessary for your dream school, that's wasted effort and anxiety for no payoff. Here's what I want you to remember. A 165 with a clear, confident mindset beats a 180 with burnout. A 158 with a compelling personal statement beats a 162 with copy-pasted fluff. And a 164 with strong letters of rec and smart school targeting can change your entire admissions outcome. The LSAT's important, it's worth taking seriously, but it's not your identity. It's just one part of your application and your life. So don't worship the score, respect the process, and keep your eyes on the real goal.